Our detective skills are honing in on a prime suspect as to who is the Colts' next quarterback. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Technical difficulties. Don't know what's up with that. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am Jake Arthur, and he is Zach Hicks. You know the two of us from horseshoehuddle.com, of course. I am finally back in what I hope is a normal week for me. Did some traveling the last couple weeks. This and that, just busy. But thank you to Zach for holding down the fort. Thank you to you guys for your patience. I am ready to get back into the swing of things. So today we're circling back to the quarterback discussion. Pro days are now in the rearview mirror, and we're kind of getting into peak lying season, as Zach likes to call it. But Zach and I are going to kind of use our context clues that we've picked up from some of these pro days and just kind of the last couple weeks of buzz to kind of identify who we think might be going where or what makes the most sense, at least. So, Zach, the Colts are meeting with, they're not hosting everyone at the facility, but they're meeting with the top 4 quarterbacks this week. It's been reported, I think Albert Breer reported that they're working out CJ Stroud and Bryce Young out in Southern California today, Monday. And then they'll also be meeting with Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. And they've already met with Hendon Hooker previously. So they obviously were not very heavily represented at pro days, but they're doing that tire kicking this week.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We love pro days. We went to a couple pro days this year. You obviously traveled out there for 2 of the top quarterbacks in Hendon Hooker's pro day, and I think you were at CJ Stroud's pro day as well.
Yep.
You're not really learning too much there. Like it's a part of the process, obviously, but if like guys aren't testing, like CJ Stroud didn't test by any means, Will Levis didn't test it. Like none of these guys tested at their pro days. So you're really not learning much of anything. You're just kind of watching them throw in shorts in a comfortable environment, and you're getting your oohs and ahs and your tweets off about it and stuff like that. But you know, you're not really learning much outside of sitting down with them after the pro day or before the pro day and like a meeting and talking with them and kind of getting to know them. So it makes more sense to work them out individually or work them out separately away from the pro day. So they're in like more of an uncomfortable environment. So you get to kind of understand them a little bit more and see how they react to something that's not like on their home field in front of all their home fans and home friends and stuff like that. So yeah, I think this makes more sense. You know, again, the pro days, they are what they are. You know, it's a couple testing, a little bit of showing off in the field drills and stuff, but that's really all it is. Like you're really not learning too much. So it makes a ton of sense doing what the Colts are doing, especially having, I think Anthony Richardson and Will Levis are both coming to Indy or going to be in the Indy facility. So they're getting those guys, the 2 guys who are most likely to be who they're deciding in between on draft day, get those guys into the building and kind of figure out which one you want to go with.
Yeah, we've heard so much about all the work they've done on Richardson, you know, really all year. This didn't just start when he got hot. Like they've been looking into him for a long time, even down in Gainesville and things like that. And you're right, there's not really a whole lot to glean from the pro days. Like I pay attention to what's going on the field, but my priority is watching whatever Colts representative I can see. I want to watch what they're watching.
Right.
Didn't get a whole lot out of Tennessee, unfortunately. Their availability near the end of the thing was a little weird, but there's definitely some guys in the trenches that, you know, I saw them looking into him at Ohio State and Tennessee. So would not be surprised to see some edge rushers, some offensive tackles. They seem to like those guys. But, you know, leading more into Anthony Richardson, we saw something kind of different from his pro day. You know, for the most part, we've seen, you know, Midwest area scout Mike Lacey out there looking at all these top quarterbacks. But Morocco Brown actually made an appearance down at Florida. And, you know, you and I have talked about this a bunch. You know, there's a few guys who, if you see these guys from the Colts at a pro day, it means there's something there. And Morocco Brown, you know, he's one of, I think he's, you know, 3rd in command in the front office. So If he's there, it means quite a bit. So they're doing their due diligence on Anthony Richardson. And like you said, it kind of seems like he might be the leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah, I've kind of always felt throughout this whole process that he would be the leader in the clubhouse just because he fits everything that Chris Ballard looks for in a prospect. And I know it's hard to extrapolate that for quarterback because there's so much more that goes into it. But Chris Ballard is an upside guy. He's the guy who's going to bet on traits and bet on those alien abilities. And that's what Anthony Richardson is. He's the guy who has those abilities. It's just getting him to where you're going. And honestly, the whole head coaching search was about getting that offensive coach. So it makes sense to pair it with a high upside young quarterback like Anthony Richardson. But to kind of add some more context, Morocco Brown being at a pro day doesn't mean the Colts are absolutely drafting a player from that pro day. It does mean, though, that they had their most trusted scout. And that's Morocco Brown. I mean, he's the most trusted eyes at a pro day. They had him down there. I know he was already down in that area. He was at the Georgia pro day. He's been making his rounds at some of the bigger pro days down there in the South. So he was probably in the area already, but again, getting your most trusted eyes there at that pro day to see Anthony Richardson live, I'm not saying that means for sure they're taking him, but I think, like you said, it kind of like nudges that like, okay, maybe Richardson's the guy. And, I heard from somebody who was there at the pro day saying like, yeah, Morocco Brown was like by Richardson all day. Like he was next to, like he was talking to him after every throw. Like he was walking around behind him, like keeping a close eye on Anthony Richardson the entire day. So again, I'm not saying this 100% says that it's going to be Anthony Richardson, but again, they had their most trusted guy in that actually travels. Ed Dodds and Chris Ballard don't really travel. Morocco Brown is like those guys' eyes out there. He was there in person. So if he goes back and says like, look, we need to get this guy, that's going to be huge for the Colts moving up to 3 or maybe staying at 4 and taking him.
Yeah, and then so the other most realistic option, we'll get to the other top guys in a minute, but the other most realistic option seems to be Will Levis. There's that top core group, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and then Anthony Richardson and Will Levis are kind of on this other peak here. So there was a couple conflicting things that came out over the week, and I don't really know if you saw them or not. I honestly don't know how much weight either of them carry. So I believe this first one was Jeremy Fowler. Someone just showed it to me. It was from a report or something. But it was about how Will Levis, a lot of people around the league think Will Levis and the Colts make a lot of sense, maybe more so than most of the other teams that are projected to be a fit for him. Basically, big athletic quarterback, they kind of made it seem like it would be from the Carson Wentz vein, which still doesn't make too much more sense to me.
No.
As much physical matters, like the mental and the attitude and all that stuff matters just as much, if not more, to the Colts. So I would be a little surprised on that one. And that kind of carries into this other thing. Someone tagged us in this. It was from Colin Cowherd's show recently. So I've heard, I can't verify it at all, that, Chris Ballard and Colin Cowherd are on good terms. They maybe talk every now and then. But Cowherd said on his show, Will Levis posted some like shirtless mirror pictures or whatever recently, and he's talked to a couple GMs, one of them who could be in position to draft Levis, and they just don't like it whatsoever. Like no one he's talked to likes what Levis is doing right now, this and that. And, CJ Stroud isn't doing stuff like this, blah, blah, blah. And you and I think we're both fine with Will Levis as a prospect. He's not our top guy by any means, but I think this just kind of goes into the just dogpiling on him, like a lot of people are doing. Like, just to give some context to the shirtless picture thing, like he was hurt like all year, I guess, and he lost a lot of like definition and muscle mass, and he just wasn't physically the same guy he'd been. And so he showed a progress picture of like, look how much I fell off physically later in the season, and now look, I've been able to work a lot harder, and now I'm healthy again. And a lot of people just took that as like a shirtless gym bro thirst trap pick. And like, I don't know. I think it's important to add context to stuff like that, because he might be a little bit of a bro. I don't know. But like, I don't know. I think he's more so trying to show that he was healthy. I don't think that's a big reason to bury him. And I really hope that teams aren't looking at it that way either.
Yeah, Colin Cowherd is full of something, is what I'll say. So that's all I'll say about Colin Cowherd. He's a TV guy. You got to say these really bombastic, crazy things to get views, and that's just how TV is right now. And I'm not trying to say we're better than TV guys because we're on podcasts or anything like that, but it's just how TV guys are. They have to say everything for the clip. And maybe a GM did tell him. Maybe it was a GM picking 30th who has a quarterback, or maybe it was the Bengals GM or something being like, oh yeah, we wouldn't take him. Well, yeah, you're not taking him. You have Joe Burrow. Like, sure, you don't like it. And then, yeah, a team that's like in the range to draft or whatever. Maybe that's like the Seahawks GM who they're probably not going quarterback, or the Falcons GM where they're probably not going quarterback. So Colin Cowherd, yeah, he can do his thing. In terms of the other thing, Jeremy Fowler stuff, I'll say a little bit more in our next segment about why I think that's coming out now and who I think is driving that. But I will say at the end of the day, Will Levis, good prospect, a quarterback that should go in round 1, maybe in the upper half of round 1. Like, there's a lot of really good things there in terms of talent, mentality, and just the person he is. So yeah, I don't doubt the Colts like him. I'm sure the Colts like him a good bit, and they could have him above Anthony Richardson. Like, it wouldn't shock me at all. I just think the timing of it, I'll go into it more in segment 2, but I think the timing of it points to something else.
Yeah, we're going to dive into some of those latest rumors and the whole lying season thing here in a second. But first, we want to chat with you guys about our friends over at Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game a lot over the last few months. And if you've ever thought that you would make a good GM, then this game is definitely for you. It's actually not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty, even in a game. When you guys play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through the season and lead your team to glory, trying to build a historic dynasty. In my opinion, I was well on my way to winning the whole thing in our staff league last year, but my owner did decide to give me the stanky boot after I guaranteed a championship and did not deliver. So don't do that.
Yes, the draft is coming soon in reality, and with Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the whole thing and molding your team from top to bottom. Locked On Colts listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps, so make sure you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, Jake. So we'll kick off this latest buzz and rumors thing about talking about CJ Stroud, talking about Bryce Young. Yes, the Colts are going to see them in person, work them out at their facility there in California this week. I would say less than 1% chance those guys are not the top 2 picks. Like, I would say everything I've heard, everything I've seen everyone else here, everything that's kind of been put out there ever since Carolina made that move up to 1 is it's going to go CJ Stroud at 1, Bryce Young at 2. And the NFL draft starts at 3. Would you agree with that there, Jake?
Yeah. As much as, there's smoke screens and lying and people just trying to like throw a whole wrench in the mix, I feel like every year, for the most part, you kind of know what's going to happen in certain spots. And there just seems to be very little mystery to the top of this thing. And you and I just know so much context to both of it that it just makes too much sense. Like, CJ Stroud and the Panthers and Frank Reich, that just seems like a match made in heaven. Stroud is very much a Frank Reich style of quarterback. We have seen how much Frank seems to appreciate watching Stroud. They've talked, they've worked out and everything. Like, that just seems like too good to be true. And Frank's not really of the lying type. He's not going to go out there and building a bunch of smoke screens. Like, I think what Frank is doing and what he's showing is genuine. And I mean, they didn't hire Frank to not be an influential person and, help make this decision at who's going to be their quarterback. And then at Bryce Young, probably not as public, but I think we really think the Texans like him. D'Amico Ryans really likes Bryce Young, fellow Alabama alum. Even if the Panthers were to get Young, I don't know that the Stroud would go to the Texans, but again, that's when you say, the draft starts at number 3 is, I don't want to say they're ironclad, but I just would be really, really surprised if those weren't the first 2 picks to those specific teams, barring another team trading in and mixing everything up, but I'd be really surprised.
Yeah. So now let's talk about that number 3 spot, because this is where I really wanted to get into it. That last part there is if you've been following news around the NFL and NFL media and stuff the last 2 weeks, it has been on one side, we've heard like, oh, the Seahawks might move up from number 5. Oh, the Lions might move up from 6. Oh, Vegas is really looking into these quarterbacks. They might move up from that to number 3. Oh, the Titans, here they come. Now the Titans are coming up to number 3. And then on the Colts end, you've been hearing a lot this past week. They're cool with Levis. They're cool with Richardson. Oh, look, they're looking into Lamar Jackson. Oh, look, Hendon Hooker in round 2. It seems like it's going to happen. What we have right now is 2 teams that somewhat want to make a deal with each other in the Cardinals and the Colts. Colts, obviously, if they don't have to make a deal, they won't go up. But they're fine with making that deal to go up and get their quarterback. On the other hand, you have the Cardinals who, unless they get an offer that like Carolina gave the Bears, they don't want to move out of that top 3 or 4 because they want to get the top defender available. But they want to get extra picks on top of that. So they want to move to 4. They don't want to move to 5, 6, 7, 11, whatever these other positions are, unless they're getting like a future first and other future stuff. So what we're going to have for about a month now, for another month here, guys, is the most absurd lying season between 2 squads that have respect for each other and have open communication. Like I have heard they have already talked about a potential trade and what the parameters that would look like. But you had the Cardinals trying to drive up that price just a little bit more, and the Colts trying to drive it down a little bit more. That's what this whole next month is going to be. The Colts, we're going to hear constant Lamar Jackson stuff. We're going to hear constant Will Levis and Richardson are the same tier for the Colts stuff. We're going to hear Hendon Hooker stuff some more, which is going to be fun. I love it. And then on the other end, again, we're going to hear how Pete Carroll needs Anthony Richardson to do everything. Like Pete Carroll, oh my gosh, he needs Anthony Richardson. He's going to come up to number 3. We're going to hear about how Jared Goff is not the guy in Detroit, and they're going to come up to number 3. We're going to hear about Tennessee with Vrabel wants to get, their guy, and they're going to give up multiple first-round picks to come up. It's all lying season. I would be shocked by the end of this if it's not Indy moving up to 3 for a date for like 2 picks, like maybe 79 this year and maybe a second or third next year, plus a little bit of cash on at the end. I'd be completely shocked if a team jumped Indy. From everything I've heard, everything that I've kind of seen around this, I really think right now we're in the situation where we got 2 teams just trying to drive that price up a little bit more. Like the Cardinals trying to get just an extra pick or 2 from the Colts, and Colts are trying to make it so they don't have to move up to 3. But again, the Cardinals would rather move out from 3 to 6 or 7 or whatever than get nothing. But I do think they want to stay in that top 3 or 4 range to get that top defender. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a lot of postulating between the 2 sides. It's going to be a lot of, trying to get someone to, it's a game of chicken between these 2 right now. I think both want to make a deal, and we're kind of seeing that kind of negotiation through the media, but it's going to go right up till draft day. These 2 teams are going to be just leaking the most random stuff in order to get that value moved up and down. So don't believe it really anything you see here in April, even if it's something that you like say you're a big Anthony Richardson person and all of a sudden you see Colts are going to take Anthony Richardson no matter what. Like they are sold on it. Don't believe it. It's lying season. April is where GMs and front office people are just so bored. They're throwing out random stuff, trying to move draft value as much as possible. It is lying season, guys. And these 2 teams are in a game of chicken right now, trying to get that value up and down. But ultimately, I'd be really shocked if it's not the Colts just moving up to 3 for a couple extra picks.
Yeah, I know everyone has been kind of waiting on that move. The Colts got to get up there, and it may very well happen. We know exactly how patient Chris Ballard can be. I mean, the talks and flirtations with them and the Eagles about the Carson Wentz thing went on forever a couple years ago. So there's no deadline to do this up until April 27th. So we do still have 3.5 weeks for this. And you're right. It's 2 stubborn sides. The Colts aren't going to force any big, I think moving up 1 spot's perfect for them because they're never going to give up a huge amount of draft capital. Will they give up a day, 1 or 2 day 2 picks, whatever, it's something in the future? Sure. Because that's not going to totally strap them and ruin their draft. And then likewise, like you said, the Cardinals probably want to make sure they land Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, whatever they can do. So it's literally the perfect thing. The Colts only have to give up enough to move up 1 spot, and the Cardinals can still get a little bit recouped and only have to move back 1 spot, and they're not in danger of the Colts picking their player. So
yeah,
I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I think the Colts are the most likely team that would move up to 3.
Yeah. I think there could be a team like, the Lions have a lot of capital. They can move up and they could offer number 6. They could offer 18 and then even a little bit more. And if I'm the Cardinals, I'm taking that personally. But you never know. I think ideally the Cardinals want to move back to number 4. I think they want to get 35 from the Colts, and the Colts probably don't want to give up 35 because they know with 35 you can move back and get an extra 3rd rounder as well. So they'd be much more willing to give up number 79 plus next year's 2nd or next year's 3rd and some day 3 picks on top of it. So it's all just the game of chicken right now. These two teams are negotiating through the media, and you're just going to see every single national like beat reporter type guy. You're going to see the Ian Rappaport being like, Colts are locked in on both these quarterbacks. They want both so bad, because that's the Colts leaking that out to Rappaport. And then you're going to see on the other end how Schefter will tweet out something like the Vegas is all in on Anthony Richardson and will do whatever it takes to get him. It's just these two sides are trying to get the other one to budge first. So I do think, again, ultimately, I think the Colts are going to move up to 3. I think they're going to get whichever quarterback they want. I'm not saying which one it is because I don't know. I don't even know if they know yet. But I do think they're going to ultimately move up to 3 and get their guy. I just think it's going to be a long process to get there. And the Cardinals aren't going to agree to a deal until draft night anyway, because that's where your value is going to be the most. Like if you're going to have a team like Tennessee or Detroit or whoever give you this crazy deal that makes you want to move back even more than just to 4, it's going to happen on draft night. Or if you're going to really get the Colts to flinch, it's going to happen on draft night. So there's not going to be a trade done until draft night because of the value that's going to come there. But I do think it's just a big game of chicken right now. And unfortunately, we're along for the ride until draft night.
Yeah, deadline spur actions for sure. Because I mean, we've seen the Colts. They moved from 3 to 6 before the draft back in 2018. We've seen them get ahead of it early before, which could happen. But God, either side, they have all this time to bargain for. I don't really see it happening already. I will say though, one of those teams that has been kind of mentioned in moving up and, possibly hopping the Colts at 3 would be Seattle at 5. I don't know. That's going to take a lot steeper of a ticket, I think, because I don't think Arizona is going to be wanting to give a division rival the ammo to come in and get a quarterback and hopefully set themselves up for the next 10, 12 years. So, that's one team that I don't want to completely write them off the table, but it kind of lessens the competition a little bit, because that's another team that a lot of people have talked about, especially with Richardson, wanting Richardson and hopping up to 3 to get him.
Yeah, the things I've heard, I've actually been one of the bigger proponents of saying Detroit's the team to watch, but something I heard today was probably not for Detroit now, that they're pretty set with Goff and they're feeling happy there. And there's a certain defender that they're going to take at 6. At 5, I don't see Seattle doing. I think Seattle's trying to leak that they're interested because they want a team to jump up from behind them to number 3. So the Colts, they take like Levis, so all quarterbacks go in front of them, so they get the top defender in the entire draft. Like they want the Cardinals to move out of that spot just so they can get their top defender. So I think that's just them playing chicken as well. The only team I'd really, really say to watch that I'm somewhat nervous about is Vegas, because you have a coach that might be on the hot seat. Like we don't really know, like they would have to pay him a lot to get rid of him. So they could be a little desperate. And then they have a front office that is notoriously secretive. Like he comes from their GM comes from that Patriots line where they're just kind of secretive. You don't really know what they're doing. Like they're just a true wild card. Yes, they just gave that big money to Jimmy Garoppolo. They do technically have an out next year though. So it could just be like a 1-year rental. So they're the ones I'm most nervous about, because I just don't see the Titans giving up like a gigantic deal to go all the way up to 3. So it really is just Vegas in my mind right now, even though I've been saying Detroit for a while, but we'll see. We'll see. It's all lying season. Who knows? Maybe there's 30 teams that want to move up to 3. Like, who knows? Like I have no clue right now.
I think you're right about Vegas probably being that biggest X factor, because, under the Davis family ownership forever, they have never been afraid to take big swings and go move up and do what they want, whether it's money, draft capital, whatever. So that would be very on brand for the Raiders to do that. And gosh, they've probably been, I'd say they've been the team that I have heard the most about that has made the most sense to do it.
Yeah.
Other teams have reasons not to. And I mean, Vegas has reasons not to. Like you said, Garoppolo, and I'd heard before free agency and everything, he really only wanted to go somewhere if he was going to be the starter. But Tennessee is another X factor in the whole thing as well. That would be the worst because it'd be another L for the Colts against the Titans.
They'd have to give up so much they'd have to give
they're
up
at
something
11th,
similar.
by the way.
Yeah, they'd have to give up something similar to the Cardinal or to the Panthers deal to get all the way up to 3. And
they're not always big swingers with that kind of stuff.
I think they're trying to take it slow and they're trying to reevaluate the roster and see where they can go forward. So we'll see. They might be just in love with Richardson and try something like that. The last thing I wanted to address here, though, with Christine, that the Colts have been doing a lot of homework on Levis, according to Jeremy Fowler. Yes, they have, but from what I've heard, they did a lot of their homework on Levis last year. They sent a lot of scouts to his games and were kind of there in person and met with him a lot. This year, it wasn't as much. They did a lot more homework on Richardson this year, which makes sense. Richardson was his first year starting this year. So they did a lot of that homework this year on Richardson. But yeah, they've been doing a lot of research on both these guys. Like, it wouldn't shock me if they take Levis over Richardson. But personally, I think it's Richardson over Levis. But yeah, I could totally see it being Levis. I don't doubt Levis's ability or his personality whatsoever, but we'll see who wins this game of chicken, or if another team comes in and steals it from the Colts. But again, I do ultimately think this is just a game of chicken right now, and these two teams are just kind of posturing until draft night.
Something that definitely tells me it's a big game of chicken as well is like just the crazy variance in Hendon Hooker stock, for example. Like, we've seen mocks recently where he's in the top 10 and but he could go round 2 or round 3. It's like someone is out there doing some media work. I'm not going to rule the Colts taking him in the second round or something, because it would make sense for them.
Nope.
I know you're not.
Nope. I'm ruling it out.
It's on brand for them.
Nope.
But they're not taking him in the top 10.
Nope.
Not happening.
They're not taking him at all. I'm out. Nope.
Okay, so now I'm gonna have to have a show where it's just you talking about kickers and Hendon Hooker being taken at 4 and drinking coffee, all the things you hate.
I did talk Hendon Hooker the other day. I love him as a person. I'm a VT guy. He went to VT. I love him. He's a great dude. It's just that profile is the scariest profile in this entire draft. Bryce Young is a complete outlier with his weight, but there's enough there on film and enough him doing stuff in pro offense. Anthony Richardson's just overall accuracy is a major outlier, but we've seen guys succeed in that way before. I don't think we've ever seen a 25-year-old quarterback coming from that Baylor spread offense where the middle of the field doesn't exist to him on film. So how are you going to come to the NFL? It's just, I like Hendon Hooker, and I hate talking bad about him on all these things, but no. Nope, I'm sorry. Just don't take a quarterback if you're passing on them in the top 10. Just don't take one. There's no point.
That's the thing. I think we are allowed to go middle of the road, especially, Hooker and Levis are a couple of the guys, and Richardson has had this too, where people are either just vehemently against him or just absolutely waving the flags for him. There's not much middle ground there. Yeah. And I think there's some reason for optimism and pessimism. I can't say it.
You can't.
Pessimism.
You're on a podcast, Jake. Come on.
I'm a professional talkist. But no, there's reasons to be excited and bummed out for any of these guys, really.
Yeah. One more thing. Christine keeps giving me things. Did we say anything about Levis not being smart? Christine says Levis is a 4.0 in a master's. Where are you getting he isn't smart from the NECA? I don't think
we've discussed, there's people who may not like his mentality, and stuff like that. He has a little bit of the arrogant streak. Some people might think he's a bit of a bro or whatever, but that doesn't bother me. We've already kind of dismissed that.
I don't even think he's that. Honestly, I just think he's a fun dude. I don't.
Yeah.
Maybe she was talking to someone else in the comments here, but
maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. I just wanted to address that. I think Levis is a really smart quarterback. He's the only one in this class who's been in 2 pro offenses. I think he's a smart quarterback, and I think he's a good player. So,
and I love his work. His work ethic is really top notch, honestly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we got to close this out now, Jake. We actually went a little long for 2 segments, but you guys gave us some good questions there at the end. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we're going to be back with you this week talking about more stuff. We've got someone in who specializes in Florida Gators football to talk to us about Anthony Richardson coming up this week. And I'm sure we'll be taking your questions at some point, because at this point, we just kind of want to tailor things to what you guys want to listen to.
Yeah, so probably a lot of quarterback stuff. I wish you guys would click more on like me talking about small school prospects to watch and stuff like that. But
enjoy Zach's nerdy content. He is begging for it.
Right, exactly. Make sure you guys are following us on social medias at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at ZachCakes2 on Twitter. Also, subscribe to Locked On Colts podcast on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. And thank you for making Locked On Colts your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes. From free agency to the draft to salary cap management and more, join NFL experts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino as they take you through what it's like to build a successful NFL franchise every Monday through Friday. Find Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'll see you guys tomorrow.